Hi, this is Mike at Faithful Auto and Truck Repair in Lapeer. Today we are going to talk to you about, what's that smell? We all have kinds of smells coming from our car, and it's nice to know what they're coming from. So the first one we're going to talk about today is maybe a sweet maple syrup type smell. That is usually from ethylene glycol that is in your cooling system. You can smell it inside or outside your automobile. If you're smelling it on the outside of your automobile, it's usually an indication you have a leaking radiator, maybe some heater hoses, a water pump, maybe some intake or head gasket seepage. That can just be an indication that something there needs to be serviced pretty soon. Every once in a while too, you'll get a smell inside your automobile, which can be from your heater core. Your heater core, usually when it starts to leak, you'll get a little bit of film on the inside of your windshield. And if you're getting that film on the windshield, it needs to be serviced right away. The second one that we're going to talk about is that rotten egg or that sulfur type smell. That's usually from incorrectly burnt fuel that's in your automobile. Can be from the fuel system, your ignition system, the exhaust system. In most cases, we find out that it is due from a bad catalytic converter and or maybe even a bad oxygen sensor. The third that we're going to talk about is a gasoline smell. Most of the time you're going to smell this is going to be outside your vehicle. Here in Michigan, things rust. So you end up with a leaking fuel tank, fuel lines, fuel filter, maybe even some fuel injectors that are leaking. However, if you do smell that, it's pretty adamant that you get it in and get it fixed right away, because that can cause a fire hazard for your automobile. The fourth thing we're going to talk about to you today is maybe that musty basement, boys' locker room, dirty gym stock type smell. That's usually from mildew building up in your evaporator core in the AC system. Sometimes the drains inside your heater ductwork don't drain the fluid out, the water out properly, and it causes a little bit of stagnant water, and it gives you that musty, mildewy type smell. The fifth we're going to talk about is a hot oil smell. The hot oil smell is usually from an oil leak, from a gasket of some sort leaking on the engine or the transmission. Sometimes it'll even be followed with a little bit of smoke coming from out of the hood or even out from underneath your automobile. So if you see that, you need to take it into your mechanic fairly soon and have it at least diagnosed to make sure that you're not going to have any other issues. The sixth that we're going to talk about today is like a burnt carpet smell. It could be that maybe today you were driving in some stop and go traffic, using your brakes a little more than normal, or maybe you got something in the brake system's binding up and it's burning on that brake pad material and causing that burning smell. And for those of you who still have a manual transmission, sometimes that can also be due to a burning clutch. The next thing we're going to talk about is maybe that hot brimstone type smell. That's usually coming from gear lube that is leaking onto some hot material or hot surfaces in underneath your automobile. The gear lube is really thick, so a lot of times you don't necessarily see it leaking on the ground for the simple reason that it's such a thick fluid. The next one we're going to talk about is burnt rubber. You can smell burnt rubber from maybe a serpentine belt that's dragging. Maybe you got a hose laying on top of maybe an exhaust manifold, something along that lines. Or it could have been, you were just at the street corner showing off to your friends and you burn a little rubber off the tires. The next one we're going to talk about is not so pleasant, but the vomit smell. If you smell a vomit smell inside your automobile, it needs to be taken into a repair shop fairly quickly. That's usually an indication that your alternator is overcharging your battery, and it's a smell from battery acid. Sometimes you can get electrical issues that will cause that, and every once in a great while, maybe even the plates inside the battery will start shorting out together, and that will send off that gassy smell. So you need to get that fixed ASAP. The last one we're going to talk about today is maybe that dumpster / body odor smell you smell in your car. We love to go to fast food joints and eat lots of fast food. However, some of that food falls down in the cracks on the floor, starts to get moldy, and even every once in a while you get critters, because it's cold out here in Michigan, that like to crawl up inside your car and eat some of that stuff and can't get back out. So if you smell that, you might want to start looking underneath your seats to see if you have anyone living with you while you're driving down the road. Thanks for watching our video today. Have a very blessed day.